Hello again. Today we are going to be learning how to make another favorite summertime treat from the United States, and that would be strawberry shortcake. Strawberry shortcake is actually an American recipe. Shortcake is not. Shortcake has been eaten for many, many years. It's very English. Over there they like to call it scones. And strawberries, of course, are not native to the Americas, but they do grow very well there. The first strawberry shortcake recipe, the first time someone put a shortcake, which, by the way, is just a type of bread that uses shortening to be made, and is sort of crumbly instead of sticking together like a traditional loaf of bread. So the first people who put those together were the Americans in about the 1850s, and so that's the first original recipe that we have. It's not the recipe that I'm using today, but it's going to be pretty close because it's going to involve mixing your bread-making ingredients and a shortening, which today we're going to use butter. In order to make the strawberry shortcake, you only need a few key ingredients that you should have probably right at home. First of all, you need flour, and then just to make your cakes just a little bit sweet, you're going to need a little bit of sugar. And then for leavening, for the sort of rising agent, you need to have your baking powder and some salt, just for flavor, and your shortening to make the shortcakes, your butter. You're also going to need, for your wet ingredients, some more butter, and some milk, and all those together is going to make the shortcake. You also need to have ingredients for the strawberry part of the strawberry shortcake, and that's really easy. Fresh, frozen, it makes no difference. You can use any, but you are going to need some strawberries. Depending on how many shortcakes you're making or how many people you have coming over who like strawberries, you might want more, you might want less. If you start out with about 4 cups of strawberries, you should probably have more than enough for your delicious strawberry shortcake. And again, frozen, fresh, doesn't matter. So if it's not actually strawberry season, but you still want to have a taste of summer, go for it. Just get some frozen strawberries. Add to those frozen strawberries some sugar, somewhere between 1/4 and 1/3 of a cup, depending on how sweet you like your strawberries. Some frozen strawberries come pre-sweetened. At that point, just don't add anything, just use them straight out of the package. But if they come and you taste them and they're maybe a little bit sour, just add somewhere a couple tablespoons up to 1/3 of a cup of sugar. And that's all that you need for that. And then if you really want to get really decadent and delicious, you may want to make some whipped cream. And I'll show you how to do that in just a little while. But let's start out. I've got my strawberries here. These were frozen, so you can see they've got a little bit of a liquid. That's fine. You can also use the fresh ones, which will have a little bit less liquid. And to make your strawberries, this is very easy. You just pour your sugar over your strawberries, give it a stir, and set it aside. And that's all you need. And I used today about 1/4 cup of strawberries because I tasted sugar, 1/4 cup of sugar. These were a little bit tart, but if you have a really good strawberry season and your strawberries are sweet, you may not want to add any sugar at all. To make the shortcakes, you're going to take 2 cups of flour, and to add to that, you're going to, again, just to make them just a little bit sweet, you're going to have about 1/3 cup of sugar. Again, your leavening ingredients, your soda and your salt. You have a tablespoon of soda here, and for the salt, about 1/2 tablespoon. If you're a person who's watching your salt intake, your baking powder is actually going to add kind of a salt flavor, so you can add less salt if you want to. It's completely up to you. And then finally, again, putting the short in the shortcake, I have the 1/3 cup of butter, and this butter is softened. If you don't have the time or the inclination to wait around for your butter to get soft, you can also just use a regular cheese grater and grate some hardened butter into this. But since I had the time and the inclination, mine's already softened. I'm going to use my pastry blender. You should remember this from the apple pie. If you don't have a pastry blender, you can use your knives, but this is just a faster and easier way. And all I'm going to do with the pastry blender is just cut the butter into this. And we're not going to make quite the pea-sized things that we did when we were making the pie crust, because we just don't have enough shortening here. But we're just going to use this as sort of a way to incorporate the butter into the dry ingredients without using our spoon. So once it's pretty well incorporated, you can see it's sort of sticking to the bottom. That's kind of what you want. And we have some pea-sized things, but there's still a lot of just leftover flour. So once you have that, it's going to look something like that. Then you're going to want to add your wet ingredients. And again, for wet ingredients, you just have 3 more tablespoons of butter already melted and 1/2 cup of milk. It's very full, so make sure you don't spill it all over the place. And all you're going to do is just combine the wet and the dry ingredients until everything is just moist. You don't want to do it for too long. This is another one of those recipes that you don't really need to stir and stir and stir. No kneading involved. So all you do is just stir them up until everything is just not sticking to the sides, just about like that. That's all you need to do. This is going to be your shortcake. So what you're going to do is you just take your prepared cookie sheet. And I like to put parchment paper down because this will actually stain your cookie sheets for some reason. You don't have to, it's just what I like to do. And it also makes it easier to bring it off. And then what you're going to do is you just take a little bit of your dough and you are just going to plop it right on your cookie sheet, just like that. You can make them bigger, you can make them smaller. These will expand a decent amount in your oven, so you want to make sure that you don't put them too close together, maybe separating them by an inch or two to give them just a little bit of room to grow. But you should probably, with this recipe, get somewhere between 8 and 10 of your things, depending on how big you make them. So 8 to 10 shortcakes, depending on how big you make them. You're going to pop these into your oven. You want it to have it, if you're in Fahrenheit, 425 degrees. If you're in Celsius, just over 200, maybe 205 degrees Celsius. Pop them into your oven, watch them closely. Depending on how hot your oven gets, how quickly it bakes, you may go 8 minutes, you may go all the way up to 12 minutes, but the average is about 10 minutes. So in 10 minutes, you're going to have delicious strawberries shortcakes. You got your strawberries, you got your shortcakes, but hang on, while these are in the oven, I'll teach you how to put the topping on these, the whipped cream. While your shortcakes are in the oven, you want to turn yourself to your toppings. And of course, with any strawberry shortcake, you have to have the strawberries. Earlier, I put the sugar in here, and now I'm going to sort of make this ready to put onto the shortcakes when they come out of the oven. There are a couple things that you could do with this. You could just leave it exactly as they are, whole berries, lots of goo, that would be delicious. But if you wanted to sort of stick to your strawberry a little bit, or to be able to sort of meld with the shortcake a little bit, which is the way I prefer it, there's a couple other things that you can do. Number one, you can cut up your berries. You can make them smaller and in uniform pieces. Or another easy thing that you can do is just take your potato masher and smush the berries. And it doesn't matter if you've cut them up in beforehand or not, you can smush whole berries. And all you're going to do is just take the berries and just blend them up a little bit. Could you do this in a blender? Absolutely. But, you know, a little bit of elbow grease never did anybody any harm. So this is all I'm going to do, is just, the sugar's already in here, so I'm just smushing these berries up, and now they're gonna just a little bit meld a little bit better with that shortcake, and they're going to be so good. So again, set that aside. The final thing, the icing on the cake, as it would be, is going to be making a whipped cream. And I know you may be thinking, whipped cream, that's really hard. No, it's not really hard, you just have to be careful. You may not know this, but there are 3 sort of stages of cream. Number one, you have your liquid cream, looks something like this. And if you take it and you put it into a beater or into a jar and shake it up, eventually you're going to get to the second stage, which is going to be your whipped cream. And the way that you can sort of tell that you've gotten to the appropriate whipped cream texture is that if you touch the top of the cream with your finger, and when you pull away, you should have a stiff peak that will form, meaning that the cream will sort of follow your finger up, and then at some point your finger leaves it behind, but that point still stays up. That's where your whipped cream stage, that's where you want to stop. If you keep going, that whip will actually break down and start clumping together, and eventually you're going to get butter. And that's okay if you want to make butter, but if you're trying to make whipped cream, you really have to be careful not to go beyond that sort of heavy peak stage, because there's nothing worse than sugary butter. It just doesn't taste good, I promise. So today we're going to make some whipped cream. And there's a couple of helpful hints that I have to make sure that you, besides just the whole timing thing of getting those stiff peaks, a couple other sort of tips that I can give you to make the process go just a little bit easier. Number one, you want to have your ingredient, your main ingredient, the cream, and your bowl and stirring utensil as cold as possible. Obviously you can't put the cream into the freezer, but do put it in the very back of the fridge and let it get as cold as possible. And you can put your bowl and if you're going to do it by hand, your whisk, or I'm going to do it with my mixer, so your mixing attachment, put those right into the freezer. and let them sit in there for 10-20 minutes just to get really, really cold. You want it to be so cold that when you touch it, it almost hurts your fingers. The colder those are, the faster your whipped cream is going to turn from the cream into the whip. And so what you're going to do is you're just going to, it's very easy, take 1 cup of your heavy whipping cream. So this is in fat percentage, anything over 33% should work out pretty well. Take that, and then you're going to need about a tablespoon and a half of sugar. You can use regular old granulated sugar, or you can use powdered confectioner sugar. That's completely up to you. Some people find one way works better. Some people find one way is the best. It's up to you. It doesn't matter. Either way, it's going to taste delicious. And then for just a little bit of flavor, you do want to add a teaspoon of vanilla extract. So all you're going to do, put those 3 ingredients into your bowl, and then if you're going to do it with your elbow grease, this is the time you just pick up your whisk and you whisk and whisk and whisk and whisk, and it'll take a while. I'm sorry about that. If you have a mixer, this might be a good time to employ it. So I'm going to go employ my mixer, and I'll show you those stiff peaks I was talking about in just a minute. After somewhere between 3 to 5 minutes of whipping with your mixer, or maybe 10 minutes with your arm, I don't know, I haven't done that for a while, you're going to get something that looks a little bit like this. So you can tell all the liquid is gone, and when you pull your mixing apparatus in and out, you can see that the peaks that form don't slide back in. And you will notice as you're going through this process, you'll start to see it thicken, and then you'll be like, oh, is that enough? Just keep stopping your mixer or taking your whisk out and just check. And as long as the peaks don't slide back down, you're fine. If your peaks are sort of sliding back down or look like they have any sort of moisture left in them, just keep whipping. You'll get there eventually, I promise. So this is what your whipping cream should look like. If your shortcakes aren't done baking yet, go ahead and just take this and put it into the fridge. It'll keep, I promise. And it's worth the wait to let those shortcakes finish, let them cool a little bit, and then make delicious strawberry shortcake. So after between 8 and 10 minutes in the oven at 400 degrees, or a little over 400 degrees Fahrenheit, or a little over 200 degrees Celsius, this is what your delicious shortcake should look like. So it should be just slightly golden brown on the top, and the bottom should be not burnt, but a little bit darker brown. That's what you're looking for. Let it cool, and then you're ready to assemble your strawberry shortcake for dessert. So what you're going to do is just take your shortcake and cut it in half. And again, remember this is a shortcake, so it will be a little bit crumbly, but if you're careful, you can kind of take the top off there. And then you're just going to take some of your strawberries and put them over inside, just like you're making a little bit of a sandwich. And take some of your whipped cream if you so desire, and put that right there. Put your top back on, and just for a little bit more fun, just drizzle a little bit more strawberry on top. More if you really like strawberries, less if you don't. One more dollop of your whipped cream, if it'll come off your spoon. And here you go. A very traditional, very American dessert, strawberry shortcake. Make some and let us know how it goes on the comments.